To understand why we have mountains, we must first look down beneath our feet and imagine the world not as a solid, motionless rock, but as a living and moving sphere that is constantly changing over vast stretches of time. The story of mountains is the story of the Earth itself, and it begins deep inside the planet where the heat is intense and the pressure is immense. The Earth is made of layers like a great heavy fruit with a skin and a core. The center of the Earth is solid metal, and surrounding that is a layer of liquid metal, and above that is the mantle, which is a thick layer of rock that is very hot. This rock in the mantle is not liquid like water, but it is not perfectly rigid like cold stone either. It is more like a very thick and slow-moving paste that flows over millions of years. The heat from the core of the Earth tries to escape to the surface, and this heat creates currents in the mantle rock. These currents are like the slow boiling of a thick soup where hot material rises up and cooler material sinks down. This movement is incredibly slow and happens at a pace that no human eye could ever see, but it is the engine that drives everything that happens on the surface. Riding on top of this slowly moving mantle is the crust of the Earth. The crust is the hard outer shell that we live on, and it includes the ground beneath our feet and the floors of the deepest oceans. But the crust is not one single unbroken shell like the shell of an egg. Instead, it is cracked and broken into giant pieces called tectonic plates. You can imagine these plates as massive rafts of rock floating on top of the hot, moving mantle below. There are about 7 major plates and many smaller ones, and they all fit together like the pieces of a giant spherical puzzle that covers the entire world. These plates are always moving. They drift across the surface of the Earth, but they move very slowly. The speed at which they move is about the same speed that your fingernails grow. If you look at your hand and imagine how long it takes for a fingernail to grow just 1 inch, you can understand the patience of the Earth. It takes millions of years for these plates to travel any significant distance. Mountains are born when these giant plates interact with each other. Because the plates are moving, they do not stay in one place. Sometimes they move apart and sometimes they slide past each other, but often they crash into one another. When 2 massive plates collide, the result is the birth of a mountain range. This process is called plate tectonics, and it is the primary reason we have high peaks and deep valleys. There are different ways that mountains can form depending on what kind of plates are crashing together. The most common type of mountain building happens when 2 plates that are carrying land masses collide. Imagine 2 giant rugs on a floor. If you push them towards each other, they will meet in the middle. They cannot go down through the floor, so they have no choice but to wrinkle and fold upwards. This is exactly what happens to the rock of the Earth. When 2 continental plates crash, the force is so great that the solid rock buckles and folds. It is squeezed and pushed upward toward the sky. This is how the highest mountains in the world were made. The Himalaya Mountains, which contain Mount Everest, were formed this way. Millions of years ago, the land we now call India was a separate island moving north across the ocean. It eventually crashed into the continent of Asia. The collision was slow, but it was unstoppable. The force of India pushing into Asia caused the land to crumple and rise. This collision is still happening today, which means the Himalaya Mountains are still growing slightly taller every year. The rock is still being squeezed and pushed up by the tremendous force of the plates pressing against each other. Another way mountains form is when a plate carrying an ocean collides with a plate carrying land. The ocean plates are made of rock that is heavier and denser than the land plates. When they meet, the heavy ocean plate slides underneath the lighter land plate. This process involves the ocean plate diving down deep into the hot mantle. As it sinks, the friction and the heat cause the rock to melt. This creates magma, which is molten rock. This magma is hot and buoyant, so it rises up through cracks in the crust above. When it breaks through the surface, it creates volcanoes. Many mountains on Earth are actually volcanoes. Some are active and explode with ash and lava, while others are extinct and have been quiet for millions of years. A volcanic mountain is built layer by layer. Each time the volcano erupts, lava flows out and cools down, turning into solid rock. Over time, these layers of cooled lava pile up higher and higher, forming a cone shape. The mountains along the coast of the Pacific Ocean, like the Cascades in North America and the Andes in South America, are largely formed by this process of ocean plates sliding beneath land plates. There is also a third type of mountain building that involves the stretching of the earth rather than the crashing. Sometimes the crust of the earth gets pulled apart. When this happens, the rock cracks and breaks into giant blocks. Some of these blocks drop down while others get tilted up. It is like a row of books on a shelf that have fallen over. The corners of the books stick up, creating high points, while the spaces between them create valleys. These are called fault block mountains. The Grand Teton Mountains in Wyoming are a beautiful example of this. They rise sharply from the valley floor without any foothills because they were pushed up along a giant crack in the earth while the valley floor dropped down. However, the story of a mountain does not end with how it is pushed up. As soon as a mountain begins to rise, the forces of nature begin to tear it down. This is the other half of the story. While the heat inside the earth builds mountains up, the atmosphere of the earth wears them down. This process is called erosion. Erosion is the work of wind and water and ice and gravity. It is a slow and gentle process that acts like a sculptor carving a statue out of a block of stone. Water is the most powerful tool of erosion. When rain falls on a mountain top, it flows down the sides. As the water flows, it picks up small grains of sand and soil. Over time, this running water cuts channels into the rock. These channels become streams, and the streams become rivers. The rivers carve out deep V-shaped valleys between the peaks. The sharp, jagged tops of young mountains are slowly worn down by the rain and the wind until they become rounded and smooth. Ice is also a powerful sculptor of mountains. In the high places where it is cold, snow accumulates and packs down to form glaciers. A glacier is a river of ice that moves very slowly down the mountainside. Because the ice is heavy and carries rocks frozen within it, the glacier acts like a giant sheet of sandpaper. It grinds away the rock beneath it. Glaciers carve out wide U-shaped valleys that are distinct from the narrow valleys cut by rivers. Many of the most beautiful mountain landscapes we see today were shaped by glaciers during the last ice age. They left behind steep cliffs and sharp ridges and bowl-shaped basins that filled with water to become high alpine lakes. The wind also plays a part. It blows sand and dust against the rocks, wearing them away over centuries. And even the temperature helps to break down the mountains. In the day, the sun warms the rock and it expands slightly. At night, the rock cools down and contracts. This constant expansion and contraction can cause the rock to crack. Water can seep into these cracks and freeze. When water freezes, it expands, and this pushes the crack open wider until pieces of rock break off and tumble down the slope. So a mountain is a battleground between two great forces. The force of the internal earth pushing up and the force of the weather wearing down. When we look at a mountain range, we are looking at a snapshot in time. We see the mountains as they are today, but they have not always been there, and they will not always be there. High, jagged mountains are usually young mountains, geologically speaking. They have been pushed up recently, and erosion has not yet had time to smooth them out. Low, rolling hills are often old mountains. They were once tall and sharp, but millions of years of rain and wind have worn them down to gentle stumps. The Appalachian Mountains in the eastern United States are very old mountains. Hundreds of millions of years ago, they were as high and jagged as the Himalayas are today. But time and weather have softened them. They are now covered in forests, and their peaks are rounded and green. This gives us a sense of deep time. The Earth operates on a time scale that is hard for us to comprehend. To a mountain, a human life is less than a blink of an eye. The mountains seem permanent and unchanging to us because they change so slowly. They offer us a sense of stability and calm because they stand still while we rush around them. The materials that make up the mountains also tell a story. If you climb to the top of a high mountain, you might find something surprising. You might find fossils of seashells embedded in the rock at the very peak. This seems impossible. How could creatures that lived in the ocean end up at the top of a mountain miles into the air? The answer brings us back to the movement of the plates. The rock that makes up the mountain was once the floor of a sea. Layers of sand and mud and the remains of sea creatures settled on the bottom of the ocean for millions of years. This sediment hardened into sedimentary rock. When the plates collided and the land folded up, this ocean floor was pushed up into the sky. So when you stand on a mountain top, you are often standing on what used to be the bottom of an ancient sea. This cycle of building up and wearing down is endless. The eroded material from the mountains is washed down by rivers into the ocean. There it settles and becomes new rock. Eventually that rock might be pulled down into the mantle to melt and become magma, or it might be pushed up again to form a new mountain range. The earth recycles itself constantly. Every atom in a mountain has been part of something else before and will be part of something else in the future. The reason we have mountains is because the earth is alive with energy. If the earth were cold and dead inside like the moon, there would be no moving plates and no volcanoes. Erosion would eventually wear everything down flat and the world would be a smooth and featureless plain. But because the earth keeps its heat and because the mantle keeps moving, we have the grandeur of the peaks. We have the high places that catch the clouds and store the water in snow and ice. We have the valleys that shelter ecosystems and the ridges that divide the weather systems. Mountains affect the entire planet. They change the flow of the wind and the air. When moist air blows from the ocean and hits a mountain range, it is forced to rise. As it rises, it cools and releases its water as rain or snow. This is why one side of a mountain range is often green and lush while the other side is dry and desert-like. The mountains harvest the water from the sky and feed the rivers that allow life to flourish far below. They are the water towers of the world. So when you close your eyes and picture a mountain, remember that it is not just a pile of rock. It is the result of a grand, slow dance of the earth. It is a monument to the power of heat and pressure and time. It is a temporary form in a constantly changing world. The mountains are rising and falling, breathing in and breathing out over millions of years. They are the evidence that our planet is dynamic and active. They stand as silent guardians holding the history of the world in their stone layers. They are heavy and solid and grounded. They anchor the sky to the earth. They remind us that there is a pace of life that is slower and deeper than our own. Pace of calm endurance. Pace of rest. As we move away from the stone and the rock, we must look at the life that clings to these high places, because mountains are not just dead stone monuments. They are islands of life that rise up into the sky. When you travel up a mountain, you are traveling through different worlds. A journey up a tall mountain is like a journey from the equator to the poles. At the bottom in the foothills, the air is thick and warm and the forests are lush with broad leaves that catch the sun. But as you climb higher, the air becomes thinner and cooler. The trees change. The wide leaves disappear and are replaced by needles. We enter the world of the pine and the spruce and the fir. These are the evergreen trees that stay awake through the long winter. They have evolved to shed the heavy snow that falls on them. Their branches slope downward so the white weight of the snow slides off easily without breaking the limbs. This is the wisdom of the forest adapting to the mountain. As we climb even higher, we reach a magical boundary called the tree line. This is an invisible line drawn across the side of the mountain. Below this line, the trees can grow, but above this line, it is too cold and the wind is too strong for trees to survive. The transition is stark. You might see small twisted trees that have been bent by the wind. These are called krummholz, which means twisted wood. They look like ancient bonsai trees huddled low to the ground for warmth. They tell a story of endurance. They survive by staying small and keeping close to the earth. Above the tree line, we enter the alpine zone. This is a landscape of rock and grass and tiny flowers. It is a place of intense silence and vast views. Here the flowers are small and bright. They bloom quickly in the short summer window. They hug the ground to stay out of the wind. The air here is so clear that the sun feels sharp and bright, but the shade is cool and crisp. The animals that live in these high places are masters of sleep and conservation. Because the mountain environment is harsh, energy must be saved. Consider the bear that roams the lower forests. When the deep snows of winter come to the mountain, the bear does not fight the cold. Instead, it finds a cave or digs a den deep into the earth. It slows its heart rate down. It slows its breathing down. It enters a state of deep rest that lasts for months. The mountain protects the bear. The thick layer of snow acts as a blanket, insulating the den from the freezing air outside. Inside the earth, it is quiet and still. This is the mountain providing a sanctuary for sleep. Higher up on the steep cliffs, we find the mountain goats and the bighorn sheep. They are built for balance. Their hooves have hard edges for gripping tiny ledges of rock and soft inner pads for traction on smooth stone. They move with a calm deliberation. They do not rush. They know that safety lies in being sure-footed. They can stand on a ledge barely wider than a hand and rest there, looking out over the vast valleys below. They are comfortable on the edge because they trust their connection to the mountain. They show us that we can find stability even in steep places if we move with care and attention. The air itself behaves differently in the mountains. Because the air is thinner, it holds less heat. This is why it is cold at the top even though you are closer to the sun. The silence of the mountain is also different. In the city or the lowlands, sound travels easily. But in the high thin air and amidst the absorbing snow, sound is dampened. It is a muffled quiet. When snow falls in the mountains, it absorbs the sound of the world. A heavy snowfall creates a profound silence that is rare to find anywhere else. It is a silence that allows the mind to rest. It strips away the noise of daily life and leaves only the sound of the wind and your own breath. Let us look deeper at the water again, because the mountain is the mother of rivers. In the winter, the mountain captures the moisture from the sky and locks it away in crystals of ice. This is a form of savings. The mountain holds this water in the snowpack and the glaciers. When spring comes and the sun warms the northern hemisphere, the mountain begins to release this water slowly. It does not let it all go at once. It trickles down drop by drop. The drops gather under the snow to form tiny rivulets. The rivulets join together to form brooks. The brooks babble over mossy stones and join to form streams. These streams tumble down the steep slopes, creating waterfalls that mist the air with negative ions, which make the air feel fresh and clean. This water is cold and clear. It has been filtered by the moss and the stone. By the time it reaches the valley floor, it has become a wide river that waters the farms and the forests and the cities far away. Every glass of water you drink likely started its journey as a snowflake falling silently on a high peak miles away. The mountain connects the sky to the sea through this endless cycle of water. It is a slow and rhythmic process, like the circulation of blood in a body. The mountain is the heart that pumps the fresh water down to the world below. There is also a feeling of time that is unique to the mountains. When you are in the presence of these giants, you feel the smallness of your own worries. The mountains have seen civilizations rise and fall. They have seen the climate change and the seasons turn millions of times. They are not in a hurry. They stand with a heavy permanence. This creates a sense of perspective. Whatever is troubling us in our daily lives feels smaller when set against the backdrop of a mountain range that has stood for 50 million years. The mountain invites us to let go of the immediate urgency of the minute and the hour and to settle into the longer rhythm of the epoch and the age. We can also look at the hidden world inside the mountain. While the surface is battered by wind and rain, the inside is dark and still. There are vast cave systems winding through the limestone of many mountains. These caves are places of absolute darkness and constant temperature. In a cave, the weather never changes. It is always cool and damp and silent. Water drips slowly from the ceiling, forming stalactites over thousands of years. A single drop of water falling every few minutes builds a stone pillar inch by inch. This is the patience of the earth. In the deep dark of the mountain, there is no day and no night. There is only existence. It is a place of perfect preservation where time seems to stop completely. Even the soil on a mountain is special. It is often thin and young. As the rock breaks down, it creates new soil. This soil is full of minerals from the fresh stone. It washes down to the valleys, making the land below fertile. The mountain gives of itself. It slowly crumbles so that the life below can thrive. It is a sacrifice of stone for the sake of the soil. The rich green fields that we see in the flatlands are often made of the mountains that have come down grain by grain over the eons. When night falls on the mountains, the scene changes again. Because the air is thin and usually free of the pollution and haze found in the cities, the stars appear brighter and closer. The night sky over a mountain is a dense tapestry of light. You can see the Milky Way stretching like a cloud of diamond dust from one horizon to the other. The mountain silhouette stands black and solid against the starry sky. It anchors the view. It reminds us that we are on a planet spinning through space. The stillness of the mountain night is absolute. The winds often die down after sunset and the world waits for the dawn. It is a time of deep recovery for the plants and animals. People have always been drawn to mountains for this sense of peace. For thousands of years, humans have climbed to the high places to think and to pray and to find clarity. There is something about the physical act of climbing that clears the mind. You focus on your breath. You focus on your step. The noise of the world fades away. When you reach the summit, you are given a view that offers a new understanding of the world. You see how the valleys connect. You see how the rivers flow. You see the pattern of the land. It is a bird's eye view that brings order to the chaos. This is why we call mountains majestic. They lift us up and give us a wider vision. But you do not need to climb a mountain to feel its power. Just thinking about them can bring a sense of grounding. Imagine the weight of the mountain. Billions of tons of rock sitting securely on the crust of the earth. It is not easily moved. It is not easily shaken. It is the definition of stability. In a world that moves very fast, the mountain is a symbol of standing still. It reminds us that it is okay to stop. It is okay to rest. It is okay to simply be. The mountain does not need to do anything to be important. It just exists. And in its existence, it supports the sky and feeds the rivers and shelters the life. As we think about the mountain, we can imagine ourselves becoming like the stone, heavy and relaxed, sinking into the bed just as the mountain sinks into the crust of the earth, letting go of the tension, letting the gravity hold us. The mountain does not fight gravity. It rests into it. We can do the same. We can trust the surface beneath us to hold us up just as the continental plates hold up the Himalayas. We are supported. We are safe. We are part of this natural world that includes the stone and the water and the stars. The story of the mountain is a story without a real ending. Even when a mountain is worn down flat by erosion, the roots of the mountain remain deep underground. And the sediment from that mountain becomes the seed for new rocks that will one day rise again. It is an eternal circle, a slow-breathing loop of creation and rest. The earth is never finished. It is always dreaming of new shapes and new peaks. But for now, in this moment, the mountains stand guard. They are the silent watchers of the world. They are the keepers of the quiet. And they are there right now, standing tall in the moonlight or the sunlight, solid and still, waiting for nothing, simply being. As we stand in the presence of the mountain, we can begin to notice the colors that make up its form, because mountains are rarely just simple gray stone. They are painted by the minerals deep inside the earth. If you look closely, you might see streaks of rusty red running down a cliff face. This is iron that has been exposed to the air and oxidized. It is the earth rusting slowly over time. You might see flashes of brilliant white quartz, which looks like frozen milk or snow that never melts. This is silica that filled the cracks in the rock millions of years ago. In some places, there are stripes of green from copper or bands of black from coal. These colors tell us the chemical recipe of the crust. The mountain is a mosaic of elements held together by gravity and time. We should also think about the hidden roots of a mountain. What we see rising into the sky is only a small part of the whole structure. Mountains are like icebergs. For every foot of rock that stands above the ground there is a massive root of rock pushing deep down into the mantle below. The crust of the earth has to thicken to support the weight of the peak. This deep root helps the mountain float on the hot, soft rock of the mantle. It creates a balance called isostasy. This means that the mountain is not just sitting on top of the ground but is embedded deep within it. It is anchored securely. This hidden depth is what allows the mountain to carry such immense weight without sinking. It is held up from below just as much as it reaches up from above. Let us watch the mountain go through the cycle of a single year. The mountain experiences the seasons more intensely than the valleys below. In the spring, the change begins with the light. The sun stays longer in the sky each day. The deep snow that has covered the peaks for months begins to soften. The sound of dripping water returns to the air. It is a time of awakening. The ice on the high lakes begins to crack and turn blue. The first flowers push their heads up through the thinning snow. These are not large bushes but tiny determined plants that bloom quickly to catch the sun. The mountain shakes off its white coat and reveals the brown and gray earth beneath. Then comes the summer. In the summer, the mountain is a collector of heat. The dark rocks absorb the energy of the sun all day long. If you place your hand on a stone in the afternoon, it feels warm and alive. The air fills with the scent of pine resin and dry grass. This is the time when the mountain is most accessible. The paths are clear and the animals are busy. The days are long and the sun sets very late. Because the mountain is high, it catches the last rays of the sun long after the valley is in shadow. This phenomenon is called alpenglow. The very tip of the peak glows with a soft pink or purple light while the rest of the world is dark. It is a gentle reminder that the sun is still there even when we cannot see it from below. Autumn arrives on the mountain earlier than it does in the lowlands. The air turns crisp and sharp. The deciduous trees that grow on the lower slopes begin to change color. The aspens and the maples turn into rivers of gold and red flowing down the mountainsides. This is a signal that the time of rest is coming again. The animals hurry to finish their preparations. The seeds fall from the wildflowers and settle into the soil to wait. The light changes from the harsh white of summer to a golden slant. The shadows get longer and the nights get colder. The mountain is preparing to sleep. And then winter returns. The first snow usually falls on the peaks while it is still raining in the valley. The white line of snow moves down the mountain a little bit lower each week until the whole shape is covered in a soft blanket. The winter is a time of protection. The snow insulates the ground. Underneath the deep drifts, the temperature remains steady. The soil does not freeze as hard as it would if it were exposed to the open air. The mountain holds the heat of the earth inside. The silence returns. The waterfalls freeze into statues of ice. The world becomes simple again, just rock and snow and sky. The mountain also creates its own weather. It is a barrier to the wind. When the wind blows across the plains and hits the mountain, it has nowhere to go but up. As the air rises, it expands and cools. Cold air cannot hold as much water as warm air, so the moisture condenses into clouds. This is why mountains are often wearing a cap of clouds even when the rest of the sky is blue. They are cloud factories. These clouds cling to the peaks and swirl around the ridges. They add to the mystery of the place. Sometimes the mountain disappears completely inside the mist and you can only feel its presence without seeing it. On the other side of the mountain, the air descends. As it comes down the slope, it warms up and dries out. This creates a dry zone called a rain shadow. It is common to find a lush green forest on one side of a mountain range and a dry desert on the other. The mountain decides where the water goes. It acts as a divider. It separates the wet from the dry and the cool from the warm. It creates different worlds on its different faces. This shows us how much influence a single geological feature can have on the environment for hundreds of miles around. We can also consider the different types of rock that make up the mountain in more detail. We spoke of sedimentary rock, which is made of sand and mud and fossils. But there is also metamorphic rock. This is rock that has been changed. It started as one thing, but through heat and pressure it became something else. Limestone turns into marble. Shale turns into slate. Sandstone turns into quartzite. This transformation happens deep underground before the mountain is pushed up. It is a beautiful concept. The pressure does not destroy the rock, it makes it harder and more beautiful. The stress of the earth creates the durability of the stone. The beautiful swirls and patterns in marble are the result of this intense pressure. The mountain wears its history of stress as a badge of beauty. In some places we find granite mountains. Granite is born from fire. It starts as molten magma that cools down very slowly underground without ever erupting. Because it cools slowly, crystals have time to grow. That is why granite sparkles. It is made of interlocking crystals of quartz and feldspar and mica. It is incredibly hard and resistant to erosion. When the softer rock above it wears away, the granite is exposed. The great domes of Yosemite are made of this granite. They are the frozen heart of what was once a chamber of liquid fire. Now they are cold and solid and smooth. They are the enduring core of the mountain system. The shape of the mountain also affects how the sound travels. In a valley, the walls of the mountain act as a natural amphitheater. A bird calling on one side of the valley can be heard clearly on the other side. The shape focuses the sound. But on the ridges, the wind usually tears the sound away. It is a place of listening rather than speaking. The ancient people who lived near mountains often treated them as sacred places because of this acoustics and atmosphere. They felt that the mountain was a bridge between the earth and the heavens. It was a place to go to be closer to the sky. Even the time of day changes the personality of the mountain. In the early morning, the air is usually still. The mountain is etched sharply against the pale sky. It looks crisp and defined. As the day heats up, the air begins to rise from the valleys, creating a haze. The outline of the mountain becomes softer and more dreamlike. It looks like a painting done in watercolors. In the evening, as the sun goes down, the shadows lengthen and reveal the texture of the rock. You can see every crag and every gully highlighted by the low angle of the light. And at night, under the moon, the mountain looks like a silhouette cut out of black paper. It loses its depth and becomes a shape against the stars. The mountain is also a teacher of patience. It does not try to be anything other than what it is. It does not try to move. It does not try to change its location. It accepts the rain and the snow and the sun and the wind equally. It allows the trees to grow on its back and the rivers to cut through its toes. It is completely accepting of the present moment. This is a quality that we can try to learn from. The quality of being grounded and accepting of whatever weather comes our way. Whether it is a storm or a sunny day, the mountain remains the mountain. It is not defined by the weather, it is defined by the stone. Let us zoom in even closer to a single pebble on the side of the mountain. This pebble was once part of a jagged peak. The frost wedged it loose and it fell. It tumbled down the slope, bouncing and breaking. It landed in a stream. The water rolled it over and over for 1,000 years. Now it is smooth and round. It fits perfectly in the palm of a hand. This single pebble contains the whole history of the mountain. It has the same minerals and the same origin. It is a miniature mountain that has been shaped by the journey. The mountain is made of billions of these future pebbles. It is a collection of particles held together for a brief moment in geological time before they go on their separate journeys to the sea. The gravity of the mountain is also real. Any large mass has a gravitational pull. While we cannot feel it with our bodies, the mountain is actually pulling us slightly towards it. It is a physical attraction. The mass of the rock bends the space around it. The plumb lines used by surveyors are pulled slightly to the side by the mass of a nearby mountain. It is a scientific fact that the mountain attracts everything around it. It is a center of gravity. It draws the clouds and the water and the animals and the human gaze. It is a magnet made of stone. As we continue to think about the mountain, we can imagine the deep silence inside the rock. We live on the surface where there is noise and movement, but inside the mountain, a few feet into the stone, there is no sound. It is perfectly solid. The atoms are locked in a rigid lattice. They vibrate gently, but they do not move. This solidity is the opposite of anxiety. Anxiety is movement and spinning and uncertainty. The rock is stillness and certainty and structure. To think of the mountain is to think of the end of spinning. It is the place where things stop and settle. The rivers that flow from the mountain are the veins of the land. They carry the nutrients that were locked inside the stone. The calcium and the magnesium and the potassium that our bodies need were once part of a mountain. The plants drink the river water and absorb these minerals. We eat the plants and the minerals become part of our bones. So in a very literal way, we are made of the mountains. Our skeleton is made of the same calcium that was once in the limestone peak. We carry the mountain inside of us. We are walking pieces of the earth. We are connected to the high peaks not just by looking at them, but by the very substance of our bodies. So as you drift deeper into relaxation, picture the mountain standing guard in the moonlight. It is tall and broad and heavy. It is wrapped in a blanket of snow or covered in a cloak of dark forests. It is watching over the world while the world sleeps. It does not need to sleep because it is always at rest. It is the definition of rest. It is the earth pressing pause on the movement of the plates. It is a place where we can lay down our burdens. We can let the mountain carry the weight. It is big enough to hold everything. It is strong enough to withstand anything. It is there. It is solid. It is still. If you are finding comfort in this story, and if this helps you to find a place of rest, please consider subscribing to our channel Just Sleep, so we can keep creating these quiet moments for you. Your support helps us to continue this journey together. Now let us turn our eyes back to the horizon and the high peaks. We can look at the mountains not just as individual peaks, but as great chains that bind the continents together. If you look at a map of the world, you can see that the mountains form a spine. The Andes run down the entire western edge of South America like a long backbone. The Rockies stretch through North America. The Alps and the Himalayas stretch across the center of the Old World. These chains are the stitching of the planet. They hold the landmasses together. They define the shape of the nations. They are the great walls that divide the waters and the winds. When you look at them this way, you see that the mountains are not isolated. They are part of a global family of stone. They are all connected to the same crust, and they all float on the same mantle. They are holding hands across the oceans. There is a specific feeling of safety that comes from being near a mountain. In the ancient past, humans sought out the valleys because they were protected. The mountain walls act as a fortress. They block the harsh winds and they stop the storms. To be in a valley is to be held. It is like being in the palm of a giant hand. The mountains rise up on all sides, creating a cradle. This is why we feel a sense of enclosure and comfort when we are in the high country. We are not exposed to the open vastness of the plains. We are tucked away. We are hidden. There is a primal part of the brain that relaxes when it knows there is a solid wall of rock behind it. It allows us to let down our guard and close our eyes. Let us think about the stillness of the winter night on a mountain one more time. The snow absorbs the light of the moon and reflects it back, so the world is never truly dark. It is a soft blue twilight. The trees cast long shadows on the white ground. The air is so still that if a single pine needle falls, you might hear it land. This is the definition of tranquility. The mountain is asleep under its white blanket. The rivers are sleeping under the ice. The bears are sleeping in the earth. Everything has paused. It is a suspension of activity. It is a time to recharge. The mountain teaches us that rest is not a waste of time. Rest is an essential part of the cycle. Without the winter sleep, there can be no spring growth. The mountain takes its time to rest, and so should we. We can also marvel at the sheer age of the stone. When you touch a mountain face, you are touching history. That rock might be 300 million years old. It was there before the dinosaurs. It was there before the first birds flew. It has seen the world change over and over again, and yet it remains. It has weathered the storms of eons. Compared to the fleeting nature of our thoughts and our busy days, the mountain is eternal. It does not worry about tomorrow because it has seen millions of tomorrows. It does not rush because it has nowhere to go. It offers us its strength. Says, you can lean on me. I have stood here for 1,000,000 years, and I will stand here for 1,000,000 more. You can rest your weight on my strength. Even the water that flows from the mountain has a memory. It remembers the cloud. It remembers the snow. It remembers the dark journey through the cracks in the rocks. It remembers the minerals it dissolved. And finally it flows to the ocean to begin the journey again. It is a circle without a beginning and without an end. It is a comforting rhythm. The heart of the earth beating slowly. Thump, thump, thump. The rise of the magma. The push of the plate. The growth of the peak. The fall of the rain. The flow of the river. It is a slow, steady pulse that never stops. As we reach the end of our journey up the mountain, we can visualize ourselves merging with this landscape. Imagine that your breathing is the wind moving through the pine trees, slow and steady, in and out. Imagine that your body is heavy like the granite boulders, sinking down into the soft earth, solid and immovable. Imagine that your mind is clear like the high alpine lake, still and reflective, no ripples, just a mirror reflecting the stars. You are part of the mountain now. You are grounded. You are safe. You are ancient. The forces that built the mountains are the same forces that keep the earth spinning. It is the energy of life itself. But here in the rock, that energy has become solid. It has stopped moving. It has come to rest. And just as the rock has come to rest, you can come to rest too. The story of the mountain is a story of arriving. The rock traveled for miles on the tectonic plate, and then it arrived at the collision, and then it rose up, and now it stops. It has reached its destination. It stands tall and proud and quiet. There is nothing left to do. The mountain does not need to be fixed. It does not need to be changed. It is perfect just as it is. And in this moment you are perfect just as you are. You do not need to do anything. You do not need to solve any problems. You only need to be like the mountain, heavy, still, silent. The night sky is wrapping around the peaks. The stars are watching over the ridges. The snow is glowing softly. The world is at peace. The earth is holding you up. The gravity is holding you down. You are securely held in the balance. So as the image of the great mountain fades gently from your mind, let it leave behind a feeling of heavy comfort, a feeling of deep stability. You are as safe as the stone. You are as peaceful as the snow. You are as timeless as the valley. The mountain will be there when you wake up standing guard in the morning light. But for now it is time to drift. It is time to let the erosion of the day fade away. It is time to sink into the deep roots of the earth. The journey is over. The summit is reached. The view is beautiful. And the silence is complete. Good night.